haven't been to Yosemite, so it's on my list. I've been to Eagle Scout, but it's not the same.
Isn't that fun when you get up like that? Everything is red.
That's perfect. Thank you, guys.
Great, thank you. All right.
Ready when you are.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Milwaukie Poetry Series meeting tonight. And when the day comes, my rescuing flower's name will become my daughter's. A freeborn woman, I swear, she will never be shoeless. So this is a very short poem by Cyrus Casellas, who is our Poet for the Day guest editor for the Academy of American Poets. So you know that we're celebrating, April is National Poetry Month. That's one of the things we're celebrating this month, is National Poetry Month. So this is a little poem by the poetry editor of the month. Thank you so much for being here. We know, I think there's one chair here, if you want. Okay. So we're okay on seats? Thank you so much for being here, and isn't it a great day? We have to be concerned about, oh, there's a lot of sun here. And it's, so it isn't shining in our eyes. So we know that you have other things that you could be doing. There are a lot of demands on your time, and so we are very happy that you're here tonight to share poetry with us. And here are fabulous poet, who I'm going to introduce in a few minutes. I also want to welcome those that have logged in online. The same is true for you. Thank you very much for spending the time to log in and listen to poetry, hear poetry read. So we're very grateful. I'm Tom Hogan. I'm the director of the Milwaukie Poetry Series, and I want to make some other things too, because we're very grateful. First is the city of Milwaukie, and the city of Milwaukie has supported us from the beginning. We're going 17 years, so we are absolutely delighted about that. Thank you very much. we're very grateful all around, and especially to people like you who come and want to hear poetry and sharing it. Thanks to the Liddy Library. We have a relationship with the Liddy Library, and we're here in the community room for the new, it's about a year and a half old, the new Liddy Library. So great thanks to the Liddy Library. And we have well, thank you. I wish our liaison Tara was here. She's at dinner, so she's going to look in on us in a little bit. Thanks also to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee. We do have a committee, and as you know, you don't have things happen unless you have people working on it. And so there are two of us that are here tonight. Are, in addition to me, Kristen Roeder is back here, and thank you for the work on the Milwaukie Poetry Series. And Kristen is going to take the mic around for the Q&A. So our format tonight is we're going to hear Donna read, then we're going to have some questions and answers, and Kristen will bring the mic around for your question. And just try and speak into the mic because we'd like to get the question on the recording. And the same thing for the answer. And then Donna is going to finish the event with a poem of hers. I want to say one more thing about the Academy of American Poets. Most of you probably know it. It's worthwhile logging on to their website, the Academy of American Poets, and see the number of things that they have available for poetry shared in the month. And some of them are a poem a day, as probably many of us are aware. Another thing I want to mention is that there is a writing contest going on now, sponsored by the Clackamas County Arts Alliance. And the deadline is Friday, day after tomorrow. So if you live in Clackamas County or you work in Clackamas County and you would like to enter a contest sponsored by the Clackamas County Arts Alliance, and we at the Milwaukie Poetry Series are one of the sponsors. There are 4 categories. Poetry is one, short story, plays, and nonfiction. So I don't have an application, but you can go online on the website to Writing Contest Clackamas County, and it will come up. 2 things we have coming up. Our poet next month is Eleanor Berry, so she's going to be here in May. And we're starting our first Friday readings this first Friday in May, which is May 1st. And that reading is going to be at St. John the Evangelist here in Milwaukie. And there'll be an invitation out about it. I've been looking forward to our poet tonight and hearing her reading. This is the second time Donna has read here, so we are delighted that she's back. She is the author of 4 collections of poems, 2 of which, Transparent Woman and The Eddie Fence, were finalists for the Oregon Book Award in Poetry. Her poems, essays, reviews, song lyrics, and cross-gender collaboration, cross-genre collaboration have appeared widely in journals, recordings, and in performance venues. She is also a co-founder of Oregon's Airly Press. Donna practices psychotherapy and lives with her husband, Rich Sutcliffe, in Maupin, Oregon. Send Word, her most recent collection of poems, was released in 2022. And you can find out more about Donna by taking a look at her website, so just Google that. I will say too that there are books of hers available, and they're back on the book selling table. And my lovely wife Jane is going to be available to sell books after the reading. And you can find out more about Donna on her website. So it's my pleasure to introduce our poet for the evening, Donna Henderson. Donna. I forgot to say to silence your telephonic devices, if you would, please.
I'm going to start right into a poem and then I'm going to say some stuff. Springs turned noisy with birds and frogs, logs hauled off slopes, leaves squeezing out of the tips of stems, earthworms, soft scrapes squirming over wet gravel, with ferns unfurling, wood violets, grass straining up through soil, soil itself bubbling, saturated, and gaseous. And listen, how even the sough of the breeze shifts now, its song also, reshaped by the way bud break subtly complicates space. I wanted to start with that poem just to invite us into the world of our senses. A particular language of poetry, as maybe all of you know, really meets us at the level of the body through the sensory quality of music, through the images it invites. So I just invite us to sort of move into that place of listening with our bodies to the music as much to the meaning, since this is also how these poems arrived, and it's where I most hope they live. So I want to say a word of thanks also to Tom for this wonderful series. I have, since I think I read here, maybe it was 2013, 2011, it just glows in my mind. It's such a wonderful group of people who always come, and I see a lot of new friends, actually, and old friends. And it's just wonderful to see how many people show up for poetry with such enthusiasm. I also want to give a special thanks to Annie Lightheart, who is here. I was hoping she would come. She read last month. And Annie's new collection, Pax, has just been, it's been on my bedside, and I have been reading and reading it since after listening to her poems. If you haven't, if you didn't attend her reading, for sure, look at the archived reading. And it actually was kind of central to how I decided, the poems that I decided to choose tonight and the theme that I decided to bring. As I was telling Annie before the reading, I have felt on this kind of cusp where it feels like I'm being drawn more into play and praise. And so her poems that are so richly and mystically invite us into the potential for ecstasy in the everyday has really been influencing me over the month since. So you'll find that the poems tonight reflect that theme of praise and play, but very much riding and embedded in the way that language itself, when we follow it, can write our way into that. So thank you, Annie. Annie, would you, if people don't know, some people know, you know, that's Annie. Pax, everybody, Pax. So I'm going to read a bunch of these, and many of them are very playful poems, and then followed by, and these are mostly uncollected. I'm going to read a couple in the first part from my collection, Send Word, and then I'm going to finish with the title sequence of Send Word, which is a much more kind of meditative poem toward the end. So that's the map. So this first poem is entitled Take a Line for a Walk, and it comes from a quote by Paul Klee, the French painter. And I think he was talking about the kind that you draw, but it caught my attention. So I took a line for a walk. Take a line for a walk. I'll just say one more thing. There are two speakers, two voices in the poem, and toward the end they come more or less, they move more or less into a single voice, but at the beginning I'll sort of, I'll signal back and forth. Take a line for a walk. Then watch the way it wanders on its own, set free to brave the breezes, bruises, freezing rains. Some groves of trees give shelter for a while, then set it free. There's so much matter in the world to see and hear. All matière and thought is part of that. And song's a plain of pleasing noise, a haze of breath, a blaze, a hose, a crazy quilt of noise. You already said noise. So what? A word can show up twice. This is my walk, not yours. Okay, you're on your own again, line. Thank you. Where was I? A blue glow, and then a peachy gleam. A bird flies low above the pond. Your oatmeal in this ringing bowl is one bite short of gone. And now a pause as sunrise breaks the hills beyond, except it doesn't pause exactly, watches still and still in motion. And can you feel that? Yes, the full attention that's vibration also. It's electrons zinging back and forth inside the void that isn't void at all. In fact, is ferment, foment, degradation, zingy things that aren't yet things until they matter, as a line out walking on its own, in how it wanders in and out of things with perfect ease, makes matter matter more. That poem does represent one of the ways that poems come to me, and again, I think as many and my interest is always less in expression, in what I already know or feel, as it is in discovery, and just taking a line, letting it sort of float around, and then seeing where it wants to go is awfully fun. For the last year, I've been teaching an adult writing group with the great help of Melissa Medensky, who is a wonderful writer and teacher in Portland. An assignment that I gave the class, and so gave me also, we've been working on centos a lot, which are often made of other people's work, a moment patched together. But the assignment this time was for people to go back through their journals and just find some of those orphan lines that just stand out, you know, that maybe didn't go anywhere, and make a cento out of our own lost lines. And so this is one of mine, and what surfaced in it was really a longing that I had not quite given voice to yet. So it begins: let me, oh, let me write more poems of praise. Of being alive, I mean. Of love and tears, of light flaming down inside like a hive of stirred bees. This morning, sorrow and wonder, warm in a room not my own. Hollow wind roar of the coming storm. The mini fridge froze my yogurt and orange in its lonesome enthusiasm. Trolls pull their pale, droll selves down the trail. A green screen careens off the canyon walls. Strange what appears through the sounds of words, these little images rising and furling forth. Now, noise of slabs sliding down steel, snow sinking into a heavy thrall. Ah, regret, mine is gloomy and gleaming both. Now, at least, less dry than wet. Note to self, many are alive in love. Rescue efforts are underway. Yeah, there's a bit of gloom in that poem. And so I thought I would read next one of also a series of poems in which I am addressing poems of address to experiences, and sort of challenge myself to do odes to the things that we don't generally think of as experiences we appreciate in life so much, sort of dividing them into what's negative, what's positive. And so this is a little address to Dear Gloom. I will note that there is a homonym in the poem, and I'll tell you how it's going to show up since you can't see it on the page, but the words roomy and roomy, neither of them about the poet. The first one, roomy like rheumatic, R-H-E-U-M-Y, and then the second one is roomy, R-O-M-M-Y. Dear Gloom, you are the roomy glow through gummy clouds at dawn, the silver blue fluorescence around dusk. Inside, you are a roomy home where fears and sorrows gather, settle, have a high glum time sometimes for days on end. So then, why write to you? I don't know. Then I do. It makes a two of you and she who watches, free to see and so to love you, Gloom. And lo, I do. I love the flow and bloom of you inside your word, inside my mouth, a word which, glom, once meant, so still means, gloaming, twilight, darkness, also gleam, shimmer, and sheen. That you're about the light, I mean. Just so, I think I will abide beside you here a while, dear Gloom, and all your low glow knows and holds. Why not? The view is fine. The overhead is low. We have a little series about faith we've got faith and science in here. This one is very short, first one. Why I am not an atheist. Because I do not believe in the God the atheist believes does not exist. To be able to imagine something, to not believe in it. What I do believe in, the next poem. Tonight, I believe in hairballs. I thought, misreading barbells when I received the prompt. Later, just now, in fact, scrubbing another one, hairballs, not barbell, up off the rug, I can say I believe even envy that furred and efficient way hairballs evolve, assembling all cats cannot digest into a soft, wet felt, then reversing direction, out. In fact, come to think of it, you could say I believe in hairballs the same way I believe in God, belief that's closest perhaps to the way a hairball itself might believe in cat, not as a kind of speculation or dogma, belief from an outside towards, but belief in its etymological origins from the Proto-Germanic galabgen, to hold dear, to love. A way of living in love, inside of being created, launching into the world from there. During the quarantine time of the pandemic, a group of poets and I, two friends and I, subscribed to the Two Sylvias Press Advent Calendar prompt of a day for December, and it was a wonderful way to spend that time inside. And this was one of the prompts. The actual prompt was to begin a poem with, "Tonight I believe in barbells," and I did misread that, but the poem arrived. Moving on now to science. Conference. We were on time arriving, but our rooms were not ready. In Chronos time, the conference of physicists who'd preceded us checked out late, taking their theories and leaving the chaos. Quite a mess, said the desk clerks. Sorry to say we'd have to wait a while longer while housekeeping hustled to restore each space. Probably it took extra time to shoo out all that dark matter, sweep up all the string, to replace these with hotel soaps, shampoos, and clean white towels. So we waited in the lobby to take the scientists' places, holding our bags, notebooks, checking our email, then checking the desk, asking each other's names, and then promptly forgetting them, finally getting the keys to our vacated rooms. And though the crew did its best with the time the physicists left them, some hairs in the tub were still circling the drain, and where there had been 6 black keys on the telephone, someone had ripped out the panel of these, leaving in place 6 black holes. That part was true. That was absolutely true. So I'm coming, with this next poem, I'm coming back to that idea from the Why I Am Not an Atheist poem, that how to imagine something is to make something, and then we have a relationship with it, right? Language imagines, and then we get a fixed idea of a thing, and then we resist or whatever that thing, but language itself imagines, even when we don't think it is. So this poem is, I was really glad that my brother-in-law Mike came, because I think, Mike, you had said to somebody, but I got it from Darcy, that why doesn't somebody write a poem about the crows of government camp, which are kind of a phenomenon. And I have not written about the crows of government camp, but it reminded me of this poem, so this one's for you, Mike. It also has a library in it, not this one. Don't expect any crows in this poem. There are enough poems with crows. We don't need one more. Nor will you see any geese in this poem, skies or sloughs, nor, come to think of it, skies or sloughs. Not the tick of one drop of rain will you hear in this poem, much less of the 29 days of rain this month alone. Whatever, don't think you'll find any rain here, nor any references to the persistence of lichen and dripping mist threading through canyons of coastal streams, streams up which salmon won't muscle their way to spawn, or will, but you won't see them here. Streams beside no redwings will sing from no willows and cottonwoods. Nor should you plan to see forests of cedar and Douglas fir, nor their absences. Think you'll see clear-cut hills? Nope, not a single stump. There will be a heron, great blue, but it won't be here slurping a flash of fish. It will stand in a video clip on a TV at the rear of the library's avian art display. You will see it snatch up a small squirrel from the grass, then the squirrel's surprise, the brief struggle before the bird, impatient, swallows it whole, head first, whole and alive. You'll see the tail sliding slowly and last from view, then the looks on the faces of the gallery patrons. See the mouth of the one hanging open and silent, while the mouth of the other says, "Oh." Several years ago, the library at Western Oregon University had an avian art display, and I think I had a poem in it, and one thing they did have was a continuous loop running on a TV of exactly what that last thing described, and I have not been able to get it out of my mind since. But it also made me just, yeah, the poem speaks for itself. presence and absence both. So, whenever I do a reading, I like to read a poem by another poet. Also, it sort of feels like it sort of ventilates and also honors our influences. And tonight, I'm actually going to read a poem by my husband and co-poet, Rich Sutliff, sitting right there, and part of a little series. He has been writing centos also, and I won't say more, but there's a heron in it. It's entitled Glyphs. One more song tonight, okay, but only if you join me. I hear the world reciting the mistakes of ancient men. I knew a heron once. When it got up, its wings were the width of the river. This is what the truth does, lifts and lets us fly. In the water, it's another matter. We're just shells and arms, keeping ourselves in a fluid relation to the danger. It's not frightening if you know what you're doing. There's always frontier, places in your body you have never been. I made a face of rock and put it beside you. When you neared it, it began to talk quietly and to breathe. That also being a love poem, I thought I'd do a couple of love poems, one of my own. And this is actually, I wanted to read it tonight in honor of, the poem is entitled The Beginning of February. It's in Send Word. And this last February, we celebrated 50 years of being together. So this is to honor that. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. The beginning of February for Rich. Now spring in its flannels starts its delicate tremble. Here a tree full of catkins. There a cherry's risked bursting its snug buds to bloom. This everything you'd asked on this day half my life ago now, toward my pile of things poised by the door like caddisflies in an eddy fence, caught between the river's pool and swirl. The life I'd planned and the one I hadn't planned. No longer separate, my things, not yet joined. And my yes was a kind of dying, the way cells consenting to split, surrender to mystery, the soul's containment. Outside, snow held its ground. Starry dark hovered over. And more or less with you, I stepped through the door into it. Thank you. I think sort of got me on a roll of love poems, so I'm going to read one more. And it's I also noticed as I came in today that on my black slacks, one whole side is totally covered with cat hair. So this is also a little poem sort of toward the other creature we share the house with. Hey, kitty cat, You know the deal, the drill, the dull reality that play has no appeal to me. Go leap and roll with someone else, with he who fills your bowl with fancy feast 5 times a day, at least. I do not love you less, but less is more to me, and more is more to him in love and sleep and food and drink and tossing toys around and letting kiddies out and in at will. Oh, lucky us. Oh, lucky me. Okay. So I think I will, I'm going to transition back to, we're going to come back into just the sensory world of language through language as a kind of a transition into the last poems I'll read, which is the meditative sequence from the end of Send Word, that title poem. But first, between sleeping and waking were bells on a wet day, gray panes of puddles, a pool in a well, blame far away, a flame covered or even snuffed, rough crusts of ice on grass, crass calls of geese, sheep fleece clotted with crud, thud of some storm-tipped trees, breezes flexing their limbs, slim shoots of early spring corms through soil, roil of lambs in the field, peeled trunks of antler-rubbed willows, their white gold glow, the slow flood in the swale, bales piled high inside sheds, rose hips redly festooning the sides of roads, rust on the mailbox, rocks breaking the race of the stream, the clock breaking the space of the dream. So the title poem in Send Word arrived as I was going down into the Great Basin area. I had a residency at Playa, blessed place. And as I arrived into that it is a very kind of mystical space, what began to arrive with me was what became, the best way I can describe it is just a sort of series of, you could say transmissions, but it was more like a conversation between me and a they that was a kind of a question and response. And I realized at the end of this that it was working out some things that I had come with, sort of questions that I was carrying, just very much arrived through the language itself, not through ideas, and that's why I speak of voices, but it was more like this conversation riding on language. So I'm going to read, because it does kind of go somewhere, I'm going to read most of the sequence, though not quite all. And they're mostly in short bits, and they're numbered. 1. Then light began its slow blaze over the blue-black hills, glazing the lake's dark muck. I expected a ruckus of geese, but one did not arrive. Nor did a wind stir the grasses to whisper, nor shiver the waters in mute delight. It was for me then to greet it, for me to rise to praise. 2. They'd appeared on my right and on my left as the plane took off from Kahului, when I closed my eyes to pray for our safety. They were wearing Hawaiian shirts, hot pink with a pattern of philodendron leaves in a deeper pink. I couldn't see their faces, just their torsos at my shoulders in those shirts. And I loved the idea that my angels went shopping, loved that they might be gay. 3. This was the thrill of the new, that I didn't have to decide or strive. Love is the original mission of language, I heard, that I could listen inside of it. Four. In the dream, Mass was a mess. Children tore down the halls and aisles, and women crowded me in my pew, invasive with helpfulness. An old film stood in for the homily, while the priest in his chasuble messed with his phone. A choir stood holding guitars, but no music played. There was no space for it. Even the host was moldy in my mouth. I confess I spit it out. I stepped outside. Sunlight spilled over my feet like nard. 5. So, what of love is the original mission of language? I knew it was true when I heard it, but I wanted more language to love it with, what I knew. 6. So what's the big hurry? You have plenty of time. But there's still so much to make in the world, to do. Does the world need more hurry? Then some thoughts that were like the exclusion of thinking. I'm going to start again. Then some thoughts that were like an exclusion of thinking, though made of thoughts, thoughty stuff. These threaded through spruce lands, unspooled across sand, invisibly festooning the estuary with their gel and dissolve as with spirit orbs. To make an effort to think them was to whisk them away instead, as when grabbing a bubble or a handful of mist. As though made of thought stuff, but not its fixed forms and noise. Word-like, but not quite words, what the exclusion was. Hovered where salt water meets and absorbs the sweet. So these thoughts are how silence thinks? I half questioned, half declared, at which anoints came to mind, as though answering a better question than the one I could think to ask. I'm going to skip 8, 9. Then a fading away of a certain connection. Words dropped out and lines stuttered and broke apart, as when driving out of range of a station. All was chips and gaps inside a great space, fragments and silence. And I was sorry, but not like I'd been before, not the bereft grief of imagined abandonment. We all want more intimacy than we can tolerate, I heard again, without judgment. And yes, I needed a rest from mine. 10. The last one. A wild gale stretched clouds into streamers, and birds abandoned the trees. I grew restless in my solitude after the ecstasy of that long, still spell. Don't imagine it's left you, I heard this time. Your solitude swims in the churn of phenomena, where stillness and restlessness rise and dissolve. But it's too noisy, my restlessness, to hear the song through the storm. You think the song's not in the storm? Thank you. So, questions? And I think I'm ready to go to the Q&A. Yeah. Okay. Then I have one final poem after that.
Before we do that, can we give Donna a hand? Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And the format for the Q&A is we'll take a question. Kristen will bring you a mic. And please talk into the mic so we can get it on the recording and we can hear that. That would be great. And I think I'll start, and I'll ask you if you would talk a little bit more about what you were talking about early in the reading about discovery, and that you were interested more in discovery of a line. And so just how might that work? If you could say a little bit more about that.
I guess what I would say, and it goes back to, in part, my interest in and relationship with language has, I really feel language as really magic, and I want to kind of let it do its thing, see what magic it will do. And so I have, it feels like and I'm interested in what it might discover, not so much about what I might express. And I guess I'd say it's because I already know that. It's not interesting to me to, in a way, kind of do a translation that becomes a description. For me, they just become kind of dead on the page if it's not a process of listening to language and where language will go. So I like prompts for that reason. It will take me out of my habits of thinking, and take me in new directions, and that's what I'm interested in. It also, so to go back to kind of the process of it, I really pay attention to it might be a word or a line, and usually it is that will just kind of haunt me. And I've learned to pay attention to that haunting and to move toward it with the question. It's like assuming it has something it wants to say, it has someplace it wants to go, and that's what I'll ask. Okay, where do you want to go? And then I start paying attention to what attaches to that line. The poem that I began with, and then the poem that we transitioned with, the ones that are just kind of part of that sensory cascade, those poems often begin really with just a line or a moment, and that moment seems to see the next one. So it will unfold a whole cascade of images, or it will open up a question. I guess that's the best way I can describe it, is that language will take us somewhere if we let it, and all I need is a sort of an anchor, maybe a word or a line that kind of haunts me, and then be ready to just follow where it wants to go. It's kind of like a puppy that runs around, and yeah. So, thank you.
I was really interested in the pacing of a lot of your poems. They're swift. And I wondered, I don't even know if this is going to make sense, but I was like, what does her punctuation look like in relation to the pace of your poems?
I love that question. It's not a question I've been asked before, and I think it's really, I don't know, it's really relevant to my poems. I move through the world really quickly, and I think that, and I do tend to, when I take a line for a walk, it's often on a real walk, and that's moving pretty fast. And so I think that the rhythms of the body and that kind of fast moving, that way in which I just seem to move through the world, I think that comes into the poems naturally as the music of the work. So one of the challenges that I always have is how to represent that on the page. And some poems, often they do have actually pretty short lines so that they can just waterfall down a page. And I try to avoid punctuation unless it's really needed to make a distinction that would get lost otherwise. But when I can skip a comma and make a line break instead, so that that cascade can really just keep going, I'll do that. Yeah, and I appreciate you noticing that, because, yeah.
I was like, don't get in the way of that. You can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I loved your humor and the quick changes that took place, yet nothing was so quick we couldn't follow.
Oh, good.
And, jump now, go there. And I also loved that you mentioned the effect of music and language in a very specific way. So I wonder if you would speak more about how you're inspired by music. Examples maybe you can think of. Are you a musician also?
Yes. Yeah, I am.
That's what I heard. I wonder if you would speak more about that.
Yes, I think I've always been involved in music, and I sing jazz, actually, and I play bluegrass banjo not that well anymore, but I play, and I love the banjo because it has that kind of steady beat and sound and ring, and have studied music, and so I think again, I love this question because I think that music is so much in me that I don't necessarily know, I don't use it in any kind of deliberate way, but it can't stay out of my poems. And I love and admire a lot of poems that are not musical, where music is not one of the elements. Love them. I don't think I can do them. It would feel as though a piece of my body is not involved. And so I think that's how that's how it shows up. But I actually really appreciate you making that link. Yeah, I do work with a couple of composers writing lyrics. And writing lyrics, I don't compose music, or I haven't so far, but writing lyrics to other people's music, it's like falling off a log. It feels so easy to link language to the music that's already there. It's like, yeah, give me one. So thank you for the question.
So we all have distinctive parts of our personality. I'm wondering if, in your journey of writing and exploring poetry and music, was there parts of your personality that surprised you, where you're like, oh, I could never be funny in poems, where you're like, I'm hilarious in poems, but it's going to be hard to talk about my feelings, or, what was the journey? Has it all been, have you had all access the whole time, or what parts of your personality were you able to discover through the writing?
I always love the questions here. They're always wonderful questions, and that is one too. I'm not sure how I'm going to answer it, but but in fact, it has maybe been the hardest thing for me to put together a collection from, because it does feel as though there are actually many distinct voices, and I think we all have a lot of parts. You know, yeah, we just do. And the longer I write, the more I discover ones that have a voice in poetry that I had never thought they might. So my hope is that that I can listen to all of those voices in the language in which they want to speak, and not assume that it has to be, you know, one part or one aspect of me has to be crammed into what I have decided is kind of how I write. And that actually feels like the challenge. When I can sort of refresh that and listen freshly, then I feel like I can listen to more parts of myself. But putting together a collection of
Challenges that,
it was super a challenge with Send Word for that reason. But one reason I really appreciate that question is I realized that I had been very much over the last decades really kind of privileging that part of myself that is much more serious, kind of heady, more kind of interior, introspective, and it's like that's the poet voice. And so reading this set of poems tonight felt incredibly liberating because that actually is a part of myself that I really like and have fun with.
Yes.
And I'm wanting to sort of live more out of that space at this point in my life, really, out of that space of praise and play. So I especially appreciate your question for that reason, because this is kind of like, this is its debut.
Oh, how fun.
In a sort of fulsome way. So
Thank you.
Well, is there one more question? And if not, you have a poem.
I do. Okay. I have one more. Thank you for those questions. Much. So this poem may or may not be the title poem of my next collection, which is really going to be all praise and play, I think, entitled For, F-O-R, For. For the lost glow of glee fostered within four walls, for without and beyond, for the fourth, for suspension between, for all tensions observed, absorbed, for the suffering made of resistance, its pinched face and sorrows massaged, for the place where the sorrows of others is held when the weld melts between, for the seen and the sighing for the gleams and the faintest sounds, breeze through some distant rushes, lap of a ruffled lake, for the then and the later, for less and more, for the burnished expanse through the open door. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Wow. Well, before we wrap up, I want to say I was remiss on two things earlier in the reading, and she came in just as Donna was starting to read. But with us tonight is the Oregon Poet Laureate Emerita, Paul Ann Peterson. She's sitting back here. So thank you for being here. And secondly, the other thanks that I didn't make was to our technician from Willamette Falls Media, Josh Reynolds. So Josh is a magician, so he is the one that makes it all happen and makes the live stream go out. So we are very, very grateful. Again, let's give Donna another hand, if we could. There are some books of hers for sale if you'd like. There's some cookies over here. Please help yourself to the cookies. Yes, we've been supporting the Girl Scouts. Well, good. So if you'd like to take some with you too, please feel free to do that. That's what they're for.